What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Growth Hackers podcast. I am Natalia Sanchez.
And I'm Phil Graham. What's up, everybody? So happy to be here. What are we going to talk about today, Natalia?
Oh, man, today's going to be a good one. It's for all of you entrepreneurs out there. We are going to be talking about how to cope with bad days as an entrepreneur. In other words, what to do when everything is going to shit.
Hey, wait, that never happens to entrepreneurs. Every day is perfect, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk unicorns.
Right? It's like we're living the dream, except it's not, except it's a nightmare. Oh, man. So today, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this topic up, especially today, is because I have had one of those weeks where literally every single day was different. So I had an amazing day on Monday, and then Tuesday was okay. Wednesday was like terrible. Thursday was even worse. And then today I'm having like actually an amazing day. So I think, but the thing is on those days when I was having a bad day, I was feeling the struggle. I mean, the struggle was real on those days. And Phil, I'm sure you can relate to that. I mean, when the struggle gets real.
Oh, totally. I think one thing that it's important for us to say and mention is that, especially for entrepreneurs, like this happens to everybody. The best of the best, whether it's athletes, entrepreneurs, it happens to everybody. It's normal to have shit days. And there's lots of ups and downs. No matter how successful you are, no matter where you're at on that ladder of success, you're going to have bad days. So sometimes I think people have a bad day or a bad week and they feel like, this should not be happening. Something's wrong, but it is part of the process. It's like a sports team. Like, they're going to have some bad games.
Right.
It happens, so it sucks though when it does happen. It happens to me plenty of times. And so I think it'll be kind of cool to talk about what are some of the things we do in order to get past that and leverage that in order to not let that totally control or affect our outcomes.
Right. And I love that you're saying that. And I think that you kind of brought up this whole thing of like, when we're having a bad day, like we can't just see that as being like the total thing of the business itself, right? Like I think what happens, at least for me, and I know especially when I first got started with running my own business, like I would have a bad day, or maybe I would even have a bad week. And my mind would immediately go to the space of like, I must be doing the wrong thing, or this is not a worthwhile endeavor, or maybe I should quit while I'm ahead, or, and so I think that, what I've come to realize and come to learn is that we've got what we can do is to prepare ourselves as best as possible to deal with the days, no matter what day we're having. Right. So it's easy in a good day to be like, okay, cool. I'm going to cruise with the good day. Right. But like on a bad day, it's how we show up and respond to the bad day that is really going to define our success in business. And it's crucial, I think, to talk about at least like the first tip that I would say is like, it's crucial not to see the bad day as being a part of your identity.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like us immediately we start thinking, oh, I'm having a bad day. So this means something about me. I must be failing, or I'm a failure, or this business is failing, And so it's like, we have to be able to say it's a bad day.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it for what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I totally agree. I think a lot of times people internalize it and they start doubting. They start thinking, all these negative thoughts, and it's human. We've all done it, So I think if people focus on that and just take it for what it is, the day sucked, I think that's really, really important. One of my tips I'll give is to have complete and total confidence and belief in yourself, even on bad days. So you can look at a bad day and say, this day sucks. This day really sucks shit, but you can still have, as long as it doesn't rock your confidence and belief, because I see a lot of people, it gets to them, and it's normal to have it get you, but just don't let it mess with your confidence and belief. Have that be kind of untouchable. Like those are two separate things.
Right.
A bad day and your internal belief and confidence about who you are and what you're doing, those should not intersect. So make sure you guys do not let that tarnish your confidence.
Yeah, totally. In other
Guard
words,
it.
like, yeah, guard your confidence and still see the opportunity that lies ahead of you outside of that one moment, you know? And I think that's the thing, is that we kind of look at, again, bad days or bad weeks as like, we totalize them, right? We want to say,
Yep.
oh, this is how it's going to be, instead of saying like, really, this is an accumulation of experiences, right? And at any moment, like, something could shift. I mean, I don't know if this has happened for you, but like, there have been days where my morning started off terrible and I immediately was like, okay, it's going to be one of those days, right? And then somewhere halfway along the day, something shifted and it actually ended up being one of the best days I could have imagined, right?
Yep.
So I think it's really important to, again, not going back to that concept of not taking it on as your identity, or letting it, like you said, letting it strip away your confidence. Because as soon as we give in to this idea that we become less than, or we're less capable of accomplishing something or doing something, then we're really just setting ourselves up to feed into that negativity, right? And so it perpetuates. What happens, I think, is it ends up perpetuating the
Yeah. Makes it
experience,
worse.
right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's so I'll share with you yesterday. So real quick, I'll give you an example of what happened yesterday. So I woke up, right? And I knew that yesterday I was pretty much going to be booked solid from
hmm
9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I know you can resonate with this because this was like
Yeah.
your life, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're just
Totally.
like booked, right?
Yeah.
And so I prepared myself, and, we talk about, training and working out and self-care. And so I've been, what I do is, like, I look at my calendar, I know what the day is going to look like. And so then I anticipate, when can I get in my training, right? Like, when can I work out?
Yep.
And so if it means I have to wake up an hour earlier, that means, like, I'm going to do it so that I could at least get my workout in.
Yep.
So I did that yesterday because my first client call was at 9 a.m. So I woke up at like 5:45,
Oof.
get myself ready to go, go to the gym, come back, get ready for my client call. And 20 minutes before my client call, he decides to text me and cancels on the appointment. And
Oh,
I was
I
already
hate
like,
that
I
when that
woke
happens.
up and yeah, right.
That
Like,
messes up your whole day, because like you wouldn't have had to get up earlier. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm
And I was
already feeling
already,
it.
yeah, right. Like, I'm just like, dude, I was so tired. Like, come
Yep.
on, And
That
so I'm
hurts.
like, okay, like, I get it. And it's not like he's canceling constantly. So, I mean, I can't be mad at him. Right. But I'm still just like, okay. So I try to turn that into an opportunity for myself. So I'm still kind of thinking positive, right? And I'm like, all
Yep.
right, I can turn this into an opportunity for myself. This gives me more time to prepare for my next meeting, which it did. And I get ready for my next meeting, and it's a live show that I have on my Facebook, and Zoom isn't connecting to Facebook.
Oh no.
Right. And my guest, she's not like the guest that I had for the show. She's like a Forbes author, right? She's like a best time selling author. She's a TEDx speaker. She's got like a lot of weight to her. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, how embarrassing that she's made time for this show and nothing's working. Right. And
Oh
so
no.
we spent 30 minutes trying to do that. It didn't end up panning out. And so we had to reschedule. So, okay, like, nonetheless, I'm like, all right, let's move on from this. And I had an interview an hour after that. And the interview, I just felt completely off. Like, when you're trying to put sentences together and you're
Yeah.
just like, your brain
Just
is
not
just not,
clicking.
it's just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
connecting, right?
Yeah.
So for an entire hour, I was struggling with myself and not feeling fully present. And then the day ended with a client or a consultation that I had been preparing for all week, who ended up just not even showing up. So
Oh my
he did
gosh.
not like cancel, he just didn't show up.
Oh
So
boy.
it was one of those days where at the end, and on top of this, I was so tired. Like, physically, my body was sore and hurting, and I just thought, like, oh my gosh, like, today was terrible, right?
That was a bad day.
It was a bad day. But you know what I took away from it, and this, I guess, could be, my second tip, is that the way I responded to the day, and kind of feeling like I was being, I wasn't really looking at it in a positive, I was responding as positively as possible.
hmm
However, I was struggling with my attitude about it. And I think it was because I was so tired.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that I've been pushing myself so hard physically and not taking care of myself in a way to get an adequate amount of rest, that I wasn't able to respond optimally to the stress of the day.
Yeah. I think, by the way, that's very common with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs are hard workers, most of them, right? Most of us work really hard. And I think that's so common to like work so much,
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a really good point, because you have to be able to take some of that self-care time, and it will actually make your work more effective. But as we both know, it's not always that simple to do.
Right, right. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. I do the same thing many times.
Well, and I think it's so, and I don't know how we're programmed this way, but I feel like we're programmed towards burnout.
Yeah.
So we tend, I've literally tried for the life of me to try and fix this within myself so that I don't burn out and I maintain more of like a steady pace.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find instead, I kind of oscillate or swing from like overperforming to then kind of correcting by not performing at all. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's instead of like finding balance, I'm just course correcting
Yeah.
essentially. You know, and so I just think if there's, you know, again, for the second point, I think if there's one thing I can say when you're having a really bad day is ask yourself how, if you're taking care of yourself, and if the reason why you're really responding to that day poorly is because you're not feeling good about where you are within yourself. You know, if you're feeling tired or fatigued, exhausted, you're either not eating, you're not drinking enough water, you're training too hard, or you're not training at all, right? Like whatever it is, like
Yep.
ask yourself, like, how can I better prepare myself so that I can show up and deal with a bad day better?
I like that.
You know?
So one of the things that helps me a lot, let's get into some more tips as well, is to be grateful. To me, like this is so easy to forget or just like kind of overlook, but sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I'll think, oh my gosh, like I'm not digging ditches. I'm not doing something miserable. I'm not sitting in traffic or something, like it might be a bad day, but if we put it into perspective and look at like the big picture, if you're doing something that you like doing in your life, or at least somewhat like, and like the bad day, it kind of shrinks down a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's not always easy to do, because sometimes, when you're stuck in that bad day, it's tough, but sometimes just like getting that perspective and think about like 2 or 3 things you're grateful for at that moment. And that can make a difference in improving the day. That's helped me a lot. And then something else too, there's a couple different ways that I try and deal with bad days. So I can't remember who said this, but it was like a world champion fighter. And they talked about training. And, you and I, we both work out a lot. And what they were talking about was like anybody can go have a good workout when they're feeling good. And they're full of energy, they're motivated, they got this fresh music, it's all going.
Yeah.
But the true champions, especially like if they're training for a big fight and they're training twice a day and they have these long training camps, 10, 12, 14 weeks leading up to a fight, they're having to train when they're tired, they're sore, they're hungry, they're pissed off, they're many times injured, etc. And to become a true champion, they have to learn how to do it anyway, even when and that's helped me a lot. It's helped me in workouts. It's also helped me in business. Like, let's take this as an opportunity to punch, like this bad day in the face, and try and do something to flip the script of the day, and I think for me, it helps to look at it like that. It's not going to solve every bad day, but it's definitely helped me with a lot of bad days in the past.
Well, and I love that because I think you're absolutely right. And so like what comes to my mind when you're saying that is one, like we need to learn, as in whatever professional capacity we're showing up, right? Because like this doesn't just apply to entrepreneurs. Like even when we're working within a corporate space, we have to learn how to push.
Yeah.
And I think and I was actually on a client call earlier today where I was talking about this, where we write ourselves off quite a bit. And it's important to generate awareness around where we're giving ourselves permission to not play all out or not show up in the greatest capacity that we can, and I use the example of like in the past, I used to give myself permission to either back out of things or like to flake essentially, or to like show up late. Right. And like, oh, what's the big deal if I'm just showing up a couple minutes late, or, they're not going to mind, or I can always just let them know. And really what I was doing is I was creating excuses around this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was pulling back when I should have been pushing in.
Yep.
And I feel like I generated the awareness of like, what I'm doing is I'm creating excuses and I'm not holding myself accountable to the ways in which I want to show up. I'm giving myself permission to show up in a lesser capacity. And so I just love that point that you're making. And I think the other to that point as well is to say it's inevitable that we're going to have bad days.
Yep. Expect it.
Expect it. Exactly. Expect that that's going to be a part of the routine, a part of it, of our lives, a part of like how things go, and ask yourself. And I think this kind of the third tip that I would offer is what I've learned to do when I have a bad day is I actually, at the end of that day, I will ask myself, what can I learn about myself from this situation? So instead of, our tendency when we have bad days is to blame everything else. I could have been pissed off at Zoom, right? I could have been mad at the technology or mad at whomever, for flaking out. But how could I take greater responsibility and look at myself and see this as an opportunity to learn and develop myself, which totally flips my perspective when I'm having a bad day so that I feel like I'm actually getting something out of it because I'm growing.
Ooh, I like that. I totally agree with that because there'll be times like if I have somebody not show up, it's like, okay, that was kind of rude. But then I'll think at the end of the day, like, was there something I could do to prevent that? Can I prevent that in the future? Should we add a process into our system where an email goes out 30 minutes prior? So it gets you thinking about ways to potentially, limit and minimize that from happening again. And I really like that, thinking at the end of the day about what you learned and what you can do about it. That's really good versus just, it's too easy to just have a bad day and just not learn anything from it.
Yeah. And just kind of write it off as like, oh, it was a bad day. Like, things just weren't going right. And it's like, okay, well, what can we reflect back on so that we can take something away from this experience, so that we can respond better. I think that's really what it comes down to. That's what I took away from yesterday is if bad days are inevitable, how can the only thing that I can control, right? Because we can't control when that's the other thing too, is we have no idea the difference between a good day. We don't know when we wake up, it's going to be a good day or a bad day, right? We just kind of like hope and do our best, right? But when something pops up and it isn't ideal or is a bad situation, how can I set myself up to respond better to that situation so that it doesn't derail me, right?
Yeah, totally. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'll give a couple more of my tips too. One thing is don't give up. It's kind of obvious, but don't give up and remember your why,
Ooh,
so
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, like for some people, it's a bad day. For others, it might be a bad week, or maybe somebody's having a bad month, so remember your why. What's most important to you? Why are you doing this? And really don't just think, oh, my why is because of this. Like really think about it for a second. Take 5 minutes, internalize it. And then a lot of times that can get you refocused. Maybe you're doing it for your kids or your spouse or yourself or your mom or whoever it is, or to prove somebody wrong, whatever that why is. If you can kind of get reconfigured and refocused on that, that can help, fix a bad day many times.
Yeah.
And then also, I think there's going to be a sweet spot there because like a lot of people are soft and they don't like a bad day. They'll just like stop. Like they'll be like, oh, this day sucks. I'm done for today, So I don't recommend that, but at the same time, you don't want to like over push either, so you want to find that sweet spot. Like sometimes if I'm having a really bad day, I'm like, okay, dude, I got to go work. I got to go work. I got to go to the gym. I got to go work out for an hour, even if it's not in my schedule. Like I might have to force that because I need to change the environment a little bit and reset my mind and maybe burn some energy off. And then I come back and I feel better and I get back to work.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. And I think this is such a good point. It actually reminds me of, for me, I used to, if I was thrown off or if I was derailed in any capacity, this was maybe, I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, it would take me days to recover.
Yeah.
So,
point.
Yeah. And so like whatever span of time, like let's just say the bad experience was not just one bad day, but maybe it was a bad week or maybe it was a bad month, that however long that experience was going on for, it would pretty much, it would double the recovery time for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so this was years ago, but what I realized is that I was like, wow, I'm losing a lot of time here kind of moping and feeding into the, the experience of this. And so how can I shorten the gap between, the struggle, break down and breakthrough, right? Like how
Yep.
can I turn this into something better for myself and shorten the recovery time? And I think that really comes down to us developing ourselves and continually learning more about ourselves through like personal development. I've learned a lot through books, like reading different books to help me shift my mindset. Mindset is really important. I mean, again, that's the whole point of the show, right? And so I had to learn how to shift my mindset and learn how to bounce back quickly. So I think that as I've practiced it, confidence, we talk about not letting your confidence diminish as a result. Confidence is a practice skill, right? We're developing and building our confidence over time. And so too is our ability to recover, right? That is a skill. So if you find yourself stuck and you're like, well, I just feel like I've been really down for a few days or a few months, or I'm just having a really bad time, that's okay. Catch yourself where you are, but ask yourself, what can I do to shorten this amount of time? And even if it's just shorten it incrementally, it's not saying go from being down for weeks to now being only down for a couple hours, right? Like don't put that amount of pressure on yourself, but say, I want to get better so that I can get back in the game.
I love that. Yeah, that's so good. Also, like, let's use another sports analogy. Like I know I overuse sports analogies.
I love it.
You guys, but they intertwine with business so good. If a quarterback throws an interception, the coach wants to get him back out there and get another throw in as soon as possible.
Right.
If a kicker misses a field goal, like if he's going to start thinking about that. And if he misses another one, holy crap, like that could snowball really quickly. And so they need to get back out there and kick another field goal and make it and right the miss, right that wrong. And so I think kind of it goes to what you're saying, like when you do have bad days, try and quickly recover as quick as possible, shorten down the time it takes, little by little, and then get back out there and dominate.
Right.
And I think that, and then also a couple other quick tips is, like if I'm having a bad day, well, even if I'm not having a bad day, I stay away from all negative things. I don't watch the news. It's miserable.
Me too.
Depressing. I stay away from negative people.
Yeah.
I stay away from drama.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't like support me and what I'm doing, I'm not involved in it. And that helps me a lot, but especially if you're in a bad day, having a bad day, your mood is already lower than it is, and those things can affect you even more. And then the flip side of that is to connect with people that can like help you on a bad day, or a bad week or whatever. Like, talk to us, comment on this video. Find people that will support you and motivate you. And they'll either give you a kick in the ass if you need it, or maybe you need a hug.
Yeah, right.
Whatever it is you need, find people that are positive, that that will listen to you and support you. And that can be a super helpful thing as well.
I love that. So it's like, I love how we're just like riffing off of one another, because I feel like you just brought up two things that I thought were so important. So one of the things for myself is I needed to realize too, and this, again, taking me back to yesterday or even earlier this week when I had another, when things weren't hitting, when I wasn't hitting my mark. And that's really what it comes down to, is like, I have this expectation of how my day is going to look, right? Like this is what my projected plan is, and the success or the outcomes that I expect. And then when I don't hit that mark, I think I start to, again, beat myself up, right? I start to blame myself and or other things. But what I realize is like, well, what's my mood going in, and how there's some people who say they just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Right. And like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't typically have days where I wake up in a bad mood. Like,
no.
But then some days I realize that I'm a little bit off, and it's those days like, and I usually catch myself, it's in the most random place ever, but I'll catch my mood, because sometimes I'm not aware of it, but I'll catch it when I'm at Starbucks waiting for coffee.
Oh,
And I'll notice how I'm either, if I'm impatient waiting in line,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or if I'm not being nice to the barista. Because usually I like to be nice to the barista. You know, they're like hooking you up,
sure,
they're getting
yeah,
you the goods, right?
yeah, right.
And so like I'm like, if I notice that I'm being short with the barista, I'm not being nice to the barista, I'm like, oh man, what's going on with me? So I do a little like inventory of my mood and
Ooh,
where I'm
yeah,
at, because most of the time I think we're going throughout our day very much unaware of our moods and our
yeah,
attitudes, and we don't realize how that's actually affecting the way that we're responding to our day, and could very well be the reason why we're having a bad day. The second thing that I want to say to your point earlier is I think it's also important, like you said, to kind of find the balance of like acknowledging, that you're having a bad day and trying to respond to it in a way that's optimal, but then also just saying, you know what, like it is what it is. Like it's okay for me to be here and for me to be experiencing this as I am today. I'm showing up, I'm giving it my best. I know that I want to show up in a greater capacity the next time, and just go from there. So like giving yourself space to just exist as a human being, right? I think
yeah.
we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to try and be perfect all the time. And it's like the best we can do is work with what we got where we're at.
I totally love that. Main thing is like you guys, if you're an entrepreneur or even if you're not, just
Right. Yeah.
know that you're going to have bad days, and what you guys, if you expect it and you have a plan for when that happens, you're going to like have so much of a better experience than if
Mm-hmm.
you just let it happen to you. Like you said, a lot of people just kind of, they don't really think about how they're feeling. And I love, those little cues that you take from like Starbucks. Like you can tell if you think about it, if this is like, if you're in a normal mood or not. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you like think it's like self-awareness, and it's a lot of times it's hardly anybody does it. Like there's plenty of days where I don't think of it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's natural to just do whatever you're going to do. So
Yeah.
I like the tip, noticing those little things. And then if they do seem a little off, is there something you can do when it's like at that level, maybe
Mm-hmm.
before it snowballs into a really crappy day, maybe if
Mm-hmm.
you catch it early, you might be able to adjust the mood or adjust your schedule depending on what's going on and account for that. And I
Totally.
really like that. That's genius.
Well, and I think, I mean, it was inspired by what you were saying. And I loved also what you were saying with like the analogy of the quarterback. It's like, when a quarterback throws an interception, the coach doesn't yank the quarterback out of the game,
No.
right? Like the coach is like, all right, let's throw another pass. And
Yep.
so using that as an example, I think one of the things that has worked, that I've learned, I mean, look, again, this is all stuff that I've been learning over the years. And I think that's really important, is that none of these things are innate. Like
Yep.
we can't put the pressure on ourselves to have expected to know this already or perfect it, because again, even the best of us struggle. But I think what's important is to be able to change our state. And I love how you brought up, like when you're kind of, sometimes you just have to go to the gym and like
Yeah.
do something to either blow off the steam or experience, like increase your energy, right? Or to shift
Mhm.
your attention onto something that's better or that brings you joy. I think that's really important. Like on a bad day, like I'll try, and I'm not hitting the mark on this 100%, but if I catch myself there, I'll say, okay, what can I do to shift my state? Really important to be able to say, okay, let me get into a better positive feeling state. And then
Yeah.
from there, I can shift my perspective. But if we're in a negative feeling state, right, and we're trying to change things, it's only, again, like you mentioned earlier, it's like you feel like you're freaking running in sand,
Yeah.
uphill.
Uphill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uphill. Insane.
Yeah.
One more thing about the quarterback too. I was watching a game. I can't remember. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I'm in Seattle. I'm a Seahawks fan. And Russell Wilson threw an interception. He didn't just throw an interception. He threw a pick six. They intercepted it and ran it back for a touchdown.
Whoa.
Um, what was savage though is the next series he got back out there and he didn't just throw a pass. He threw a pass that like literally legit could have been intercepted again. It was a dangerous pass. Like he put it exactly where he needed to put it. So it's
Wow.
like he basically said, dude, I'm going to put it on I'm not scared to throw a tough pass that might get picked off again. And it worked. So sometimes you just gotta, get that confidence back up and just go out there and do something that you don't even know if you can accomplish and crush it. And when you do, like something like that can just obliterate a bad day.
Right, right. Totally, totally. And I love that. Oh my gosh, that brings up a point that I wasn't even going to mention, but give yourself the opportunity to win.
Yeah.
Right? Like what can you do? And again, maybe it's something risky, right? That you
Mhm.
can do that maybe you wouldn't have anticipated even landing, but you did because you took the opportunity to experience it.
Yeah.
But if it's not that, you can still find something else that you can win at, right? And give
Totally.
yourself the opportunity to again reinforce that, again, you still have it. You're still in the game. Like it's still worthwhile, just to not throw in the towel, because I think that again, usually our mind loves to go it loves to reinforce wherever we are. Our brain loves to do that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're having a bad day, so therefore it must mean this, right? And so instead, it's like, again, changing your state, changing your experience, like setting yourself up for a win, so that way you can shift out of that and say, okay, I got this,
Yep.
and you can kind of feel like a badass,
Yeah.
like I'm sure Russell Wilson at that moment was like, yeah, I got this. It's
Yeah.
still like, it's still his game,
Yep. And the cool thing is, if you do, it's like flipping the script. If you flip the script, you turn a bad day into a great day. It's like, damn, that was pretty good. Like it gives you more levels of confidence for next time, which is
like,
because you could, if you get back into that, there's a good chance that you can overcome it.
yes.
So I think, I love this topic. I think it's going to help a lot of people because, entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, like we're all like hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has good days and bad days.
Yeah.
So if you guys use some of these tips, and by the way, one last thing I wanted to mention was that, like, we talked about working out a lot in terms of a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
That we love that. But for somebody else, like you might not like it. It could be going for a walk.
Yeah.
It could be like throwing a ball with your dog, playing with your model train set. I don't know if people do that, but I don't. But if you do that, it's awesome. Listening to a podcast, whatever it is, like doing something like that too. Like, it doesn't have to be a workout. I love it. You love it. We recommend it. But whatever it is, like find something that you can kind of reset. And sometimes too, just getting fresh air. Getting outside, especially if it's like sunny, that can make a big difference.
Totally. Oh my gosh. And just so okay, sorry, one more thing. Like we keep saying one more thing.
Yeah.
But to that point is also to find the thing that brings you joy and get out of anything that gets you out of your own head, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's like, let's just forget about this for a moment. Like, let's just put this on pause and let me get out of my own head. But to that note, and I don't know about you, but like my tendency when I'm struggling is to go inward, right? Yeah. Like I tend to isolate myself. And this is what happened yesterday. I was just after yesterday, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was kind of like, I was grumpy. I was irritable. Right. And I wanted to be by myself, but I had a friend who was like, asked me how my day went. And I was like, it was a rough one. And he was like, well, hey, if you want to kind of, go over it together, like I'm happy to chat with you. And my initial instinct was to say, meh, like I'm good. Right. Like cause I wanted to just, wallow in my own misery. Right. But then I thought, okay, like maybe it'll be nice just to like, have a conversation. And we got on the phone, and instantly, it's not even because I talked about my day. It was because I gave myself the opportunity just to connect with somebody else who's in a good space. It brought me out of myself and out of that place where I was, again, wallowing in my misery. And so I think this goes back to your point earlier about finding people that uplift you and really leaning on that community of people, that support system when you are struggling. Because I think, again, as entrepreneurs, we're so independent that we want to take everything on, like the good and the bad, on our own. And we don't rely on people for support nearly as much as we should. And they are there for us. We're not as alone as we think we are, in other words.
Yeah. Sometimes you can go out as a lion and go hunt. You don't need anybody else, but sometimes you need, what did you call it? It wasn't a pack. It was something of lions. A
pride.
A pride of lions. Sometimes you got to have a pride with you. Some days you just need it.
Yeah.
Use it. Take that when you need it. And that's a really good point. That will help you guys a lot. I think we've given like so many
little
awesome
tips.
Things. Like if you guys have bad days, you are armed to the hilt now to deal with bad days.
Yeah. They've got hacks. They've got bad day hacks now.
Yes, they do. Right.
Awesome.
I bet you guys listening are like looking forward to your next bad day. So you can flip the script and crush it and then be like, oh yeah, that worked.
Yeah, just don't forget to give us credit. Hashtag growth hackers. No, I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
do
I'm
it.
just kidding.
No, she's not kidding. Do
Yeah.
it, or else we're going to wish more bad days. No, I'm just kidding.
Right? No. But for those of you guys listening and tuning in and who have found value in this, like we would love to hear what your guys' hacks are for your bad days, and
Yeah.
also what your bad days are like. Like how does it impact you? Because I think a lot of times we feel like we're alone in the way that we experience our bad days. But again, if you're relating to this topic, chances are other people out there are relating to it. So share your experiences. If you have any questions about this and how you can maybe overcome a specific situation, drop them in the comments or send us an email. I think we're the growth hackers podcast at gmail.com and we'll respond back and help you get through it. So super, super excited to chat with you guys about this. And
yep. We'll have a website and for the podcast up soon. That'll, it'll be easier to like get in touch with us in the future, but yeah, use that email in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, listening, if you're on iTunes or Google Play, we will be back next week with some more goodness for entrepreneurs.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Make sure and subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Bye.
Peace out.